I bet you didn't know how much Philly sports has to offer. Your sports obsession just found its new home. Welcome to the Sports Porch Philadelphia, your one-stop show and podcast for everything Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers. Dive into game highlights, player interviews, and insider analysis. Whether you're tailgating at the Link or catching a game at the Wells Fargo Center, we've got you covered. So hit that subscribe button and never miss a beat of Philly sports action. Let's go, Philly.
All right, welcome to the Sports Porch Philadelphia, where we are live right now, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on X, and on YouTube. And, of course, I'm going to drop the podcast right after the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or anywhere you get your
freaking podcast.
There you go. At least the timing was right on that. Rube, proud
Howdy.
and living in Texas down below me. The Grand Schwabini is actually to my right in the studio. So I'm going to flip us on the screen if you're watching live. So when I point, I'm pointing at him. And I, of course, am your technical director. What do we do? Well, we talk all things Philadelphia sports. It's been a good and a bad week for Philadelphia, right? I mean, the Eagles,
mainly good.
They spanked the Cowboys.
Yeah,
the Sixers are not doing that well, and we'll talk about that. But how do we do this? We do it in pages. So we turn the page to page one. And this week, of course, page one is the Eagles dismantling the Cowboys. Page two, we're going to go with an Eagles-Commanders preview. Big matchup. First time in a long time that game has really mattered.
That it means something.
The Sixers, and they're not doing so well. Mark on page three likes to call it Sixers slop. I can't wait to hear what that means. Pages 4 and 5 are going to be relatively similar. They're about the Flyers. Why do they only play well against good teams? And what's Torts doing with Matvey Michkov? And then we're going to have a little bit, hopefully we have time for what we're watching.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think there's one other thing we should do before we get going.
And what is that?
Well, they call me the Grand Schwabini, right?
Right. I mean, we call you the Grand Schwabini.
Who are they?
Yeah, I had that same question.
Well, they are they.
Okay.
And, you know, and if you think about it, why am I the Grand Schwabini?
Yeah, really, why?
It's because of the level of expertise.
Right.
And it's because it comes from somewhere unknown.
Right.
That, you know, it's spirits that guide me, and I just follow the path forward.
But you don't believe in aliens?
I don't.
Okay.
Do you believe that we are spirits in the material world?
I just thought that maybe one of the things we could do is at the beginning of the season, we came up with our predictions for records for the year.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And would you like to check in on where we are thus far? 9 games into the season.
I think that's a good idea if we can do it quick. And remember, you can always follow the Sports Porch Philadelphia on YouTube. We're live on there right now. It's youtube.com/Philadelphia Sports Porch. So, Schwaber, listen, you always throw me a curveball.
So the Eagles are currently sitting at 7-2, first place in the NFC East. Chris Klein, you had the Eagles at this juncture at 8-1.
Not bad.
Not bad. You know, maybe they don't screw up the Atlanta game and you're right on the ball.
You know it.
But you're not the Grand Schwabini.
I'm not.
And Rube, 6-3.
Negadelphia.
Just one game off the mark as well.
Yep.
You know, another stand-up quality prediction.
Right.
But once again, not the Grand Schwabini.
Mm-hmm.
Grand Schwabini had the Eagles at 7-2.
Now, more importantly, did you get all the games right?
I'm just saying.
Okay.
7-2.
Close enough.
Which ones did you get right? Out of curiosity, you are grand, you are spiritual, you are the Schwabini. However, I'm curious as to which ones you got right and which ones you got wrong.
I believe. Well, the one I got wrong was I said that they'd lose to Dallas. But of course,
Dallas, logical.
I had a different thought on the game.
Right.
And then the other one was I think I had them beating the Falcons.
Yeah.
And they lost to the Falcons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad at all.
Yeah. I think we all did pretty well, though.
Yeah. No. We didn't
round of applause for everybody.
Okay. Right. There we go. Very good. Yep. Very good. And Rube, you have your emotional support visor on still?
I do.
Yeah.
I haven't taken it off since last week.
Yeah.
It's going to be quite dirty. I
Yeah.
can't grow the beard too long, so we're going with emotional support advisor until we
Yep.
lose.
Yep. Okay. All right. We're going to hold you to that.
All right.
All right. So, page one this week, the Eagles, they dismantled Dallas. Now, there's a little caveat with that. There was no Dak Prescott, but they did dismantle Dallas en route to first place in the division. Started a little slow. And I do have a highlight here, which I think is worth playing because it represents a first for this player. So we'll go to that highlight and then hear your guys' take on the game.
Eagles out of timeouts.
No sacks for Hurts. Everything else you can throw in the middle of the field or outside.
Able to shake off the pressure. Fires to the end zone, and it's caught by Dallas Goedert. Touchdown, Philadelphia.
Overused. So they send the center back this way, and they bring the pressure from the right, and you get a free rusher. You can't do any more than that if you're Coach Zimmer, and just you got to throw.
So Dallas Goedert finally gets a touchdown this year. Did that make you feel good?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. Well, what do you got? And I hate how choppy those are. We're working on that. The technical people are working on that.
Let's start out with Rube. Rube, why don't you break the game down for us? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so definitely started out slow, a little frustrating. The turnovers, right? We went 4 weeks without turning the ball over, or at least Jalen did. I think the interception, I think it was a really good play. And I give the guy credit. He was a little late with the pass, but great play. And then the fumble, we've seen it a million times. He's loosey-goosey with the ball, especially in our own zone, and all of a sudden you give them hope and you give them momentum. I was glad to see them score that touchdown right before the half. I really liked the fact that it seemed like the first time this year, I know I may be hyperbolizing, on that play Chris just showed, he stepped up into the pocket. Amazing, right? So instead of trying to run around the right and have to throw the ball away, he stepped into the pocket, made a good throw, made a good play. So listen, Dallas was just bad. So I think some of it was we made them look bad, especially on defense. I love the way our defense is playing. It's like we've gotten into a groove. I still don't think we've beat anybody of note as of yet, but I think we're in a good rhythm coming up on a short week against Washington. And hey, we got to rest everybody in the fourth quarter, and that bodes well against Washington on a short week as well, while Washington had to play the beloved Steelers of some of the people on this podcast and played a tight one and a hard one. So all in all, nice win. Not overly excited about it because Dallas was really bad. But I'll take the W.
I mean, is there like, is your house like, is it like heavy in energy? Is there like depression just all around you or something? I mean, look, first of all, and I'll let Schwaber get his thoughts in because he likes to ramble on and on about all things Eagles. So I just want to get my thoughts in first, and then he can just go to town. You beat Dallas. No, they didn't have Prescott. Yes, they're kind of reeling right now.
They stink.
They stink.
I love it. I love that they stink.
Okay, so let's get a little bit more positive about this. First of all, it's a division game, and we all know all of these games are going to be talking about another very important division game coming up next week on page 2. All of these division games, no matter what condition any of these teams are in, to include the Giants, every year it's a cat fight, it's a dog fight, it's a whatever you want to call it, and it comes down to the last couple minutes of the game. In this game, the Eagles started slow, but once they got momentum, they killed them, and they did exactly what they should do to a bad team. They destroyed them. So that's a huge positive going into a game against the Commanders team that just lost basically a heartbreaker to the Steelers. And it's a pivotal point in their season. If there's anybody that is in danger of collapsing at this point, it's going to be the Commanders, because they had a Hail Mary to win. They had basically a last second touchdown to lose, almost the same situation. And now they have to go up against the Eagles, who are a proven Super Bowl contender the last few years, even with the collapse last year. So I think it was a great victory because they took it to a division opponent that was bad, and they really handed them their ass. Schwaber?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I'll say on the negative front of the game was that I didn't like the way that they came out play calling. I thought that, they were doing 7-foot drops for Jalen, just basically putting him back there, looking to throw the ball long, 20, 30, 40 yards every single play. And, that's a recipe for, getting your quarterback sacked. And, I'm a big believer in getting your quarterback into a rhythm in the game. And I think once you get Hurts into a rhythm, he can be really, really good. But, if you start out just trying to ask him to make, the most difficult throws, against a fresh Micah Parsons who's out there, salivating because he hasn't played for a couple weeks, I just don't think it's a really good game plan. So I didn't like that, but I'll also give them kudos for adjusting and changing the game plan, right? And so, part of what was bad was with that game plan, Dallas came out pretty strong, and they had 5 sacks on Jalen Hurts in the first half. Now they had none in the second half because of the adjustments. But maybe look, some of that might have to do with Fred Johnson. One thing that is a positive for next week, they opened a practice window for Jordan Mailata, so they're expecting him to play against the Commanders. So that's huge if they can have him back, because he's a real liability out there. I mean, even though he's played, well enough, let's say, he's still a liability against really good pass rushers. But overall, I think that, they distributed the ball pretty well. Devontae Smith didn't get much action, but, A.J. Brown went over 100 yards, threw a nice deep ball to A.J. Brown. Goddard had a good game.
Jenkins had a big touchdown catch.
Yeah. Well, no, it wasn't Jenkins.
Oh,
it was,
I'm sorry.
Johnny Wilson. So yeah, one of the rookie wide receivers scored a touchdown. I mean, it's good. Just, it gives that guy confidence, and, maybe it's one other guy to throw the ball to when, he's not covered because everybody else is double covered, So, that was positive. So, and the defense is really what's, impressed me. Now, look, I mean, I know you're going up against Cooper Rush and but look, at the same time, Cooper Rush was 5-1 as a starter for Dallas, and they completely destroyed him. The defense had 5 turnovers, which is huge. And I'll tell you what, it's the best linebacking play I think we've had in a while, with Bond and Dean kind of coming into their own. We've been saying it every week, but once again, Quinyon Mitchell, CeeDee Lamb, okay, he doesn't have a quarterback, but he did get nothing. And if he did have a chance, he complained about the sun in his eyes, poor baby. But I mean, he and Cooper Rush and Cooper, Cooper DeJean. I'll tell you what, he can be a good punt returner, man. That was a nice 31-yard punt return. Those two guys, man, they're pretty locked down. Maybe a little early to say that, but I'll tell you what, those guys, I can't even tell you a time where one of them's been beat deep. I mean, they've given up a few catches, but I don't think I've seen one of them get beat deep. And our safeties, Reed Blankenship and CJ GJ, I mean, they've been real solid. They used to have a couple of interceptions. And, the line seems to be finding ways to get to the quarterback. They seem to get a couple sacks every week, and it's different guys. So, I think that Vic Fangio has really kind of got them playing good ball. Like for example, one of the things that really stood out to me, I was thinking about their defense. Like, I'm not sure that they missed the tackle yesterday.
They tackled really well yesterday.
Yeah,
Hey, Mark,
I'm
let
not
me ask you a question, Greg
Yeah.
Schwabini.
Yes.
How many, going back to the offensive line play, how many of those sacks do you think were the offensive line's fault versus Jalen was just holding on to the ball too long? So, it could have been that it was, they call that a secondary sack. Do we really think our receivers they've got a good secondary, but goodness gracious, get the ball out of your hands. And we adjusted, and like you said, at halftime. How much of that would you put on the offensive line versus Jalen?
Well, I mean, look, that's one of those questions that is really hard to answer. I mean, look, the answer to that question is I'd say about half of them are on Jalen and about half are on the offensive line. And yes, I mean, you can certainly watch that game and say Jalen holds on to the ball too long. However, if he doesn't do that, then you also don't get the special plays, that he comes up with, right? So, on one hand, I don't want to be teaching him to throw the ball out of bounds too quickly, because if we do that, then we're losing out on his, dramatic plays that only he can make and a few guys in the league can make. So, I mean, like, think of it this way. I mean, the touchdown to Goddard that we just watched, that was a Jalen escaping play.
Oh, he avoided that. That was beautiful when he avoided Overshown coming in and stepped up into the pocket. And I love that. I love the step into the pocket.
Yeah.
More than I like the go to your right and throw a bad ball.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with you there, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, if they teach Jalen, hey, you got to get the ball out, 1, 2, 3 out or something like that. Well, then when that guy's rushing him, then he's really just supposed to throw the ball out of bounds. You know what I mean? So that's it. It's kind of like a catch-22.
One thing that we're not talking about this game is the fact that they didn't score a touchdown in the first quarter.
I think
it's been a couple weeks in a row.
That's what I'm saying, because they did again.
Right,
so this is
no
one of those,
no bad Sirianni calls this week.
Right. Right.
Nobody could screw that one up.
This is a situation in which the Eagles put and that's why I know they they beat a really bad Dallas team now and a team in disarray. But they put a game plan together. The entire team played well. Coaching was done well. And the defense showed up and the offense scored. Yeah, there were a couple turnovers, but at the same time,
and they also hadn't won in Dallas since 2017.
Yeah. So you really can't. You have to be able to ride this. Hurts was 14 of 20 for 202 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. I think, did he have 2 rushing TDs too, or just 1?
2.
He had 2. Yep. So now he's the first quarterback in NFL history to score 4 or 10 or more rushing touchdowns in his first 4 years. Barkley, 14 carries for 66 yards, but they were important. Mm-hmm. He got the yards when he needed to. Brown showed up with 5 receptions for 109 yards. No touchdowns. That would have helped us in fantasy. I did make the right call on the Hall of Fame quarterback.
You did. You did.
Thank you very much. So once in a while, the owner makes the right call. We still lost, though.
Hey, Schwabini.
Yes.
Who's got more rushing touchdowns this year?
Jalen Hurts.
More than Barkley. Do you still believe in Rube's pick at the beginning of the year that Barkley will score fewer touchdowns than Hurts on the ground?
I think that Hurts is going to score more touchdowns.
It sure as hell seems that way right now. Yeah, I mean, we're halfway through the year, a touch over it. So we'll see. So page 2, keeping in line with our Eagles discussion, the Eagles and the Commanders on Thursday night. Now I'm going to be at work, so I'm going to appreciate a little text silence, radio silence.
And you know what? I'm going to be out of the country. And you know what?
Oh boy,
this game, I believe, isn't the Thursday night games are all on Prime.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to get that on in our resort.
You might.
I don't know.
Can you get it on your system, on your computer? Just get the app.
Yeah, I think that's what I got to do. I got to try to figure out how to watch it on my phone or something.
Yeah, I honestly I can't tell you that, but I'll be at work. I'll get home probably around halftime, maybe a little before, but I'm going to go back and watch from the beginning. So who'd have thunk that we would be talking about this as the most important game of the year so far?
Yeah,
for both of these teams.
Yeah, it's a game for first place.
Yeah, it's definitely a game for first place. So, Rube, what are your thoughts on the Eagles and the Commanders now, given that you have a sample size in Washington that shows that they're definitely a team on the rise? I'm not ready to say that they're any sort of team of destiny or even a playoff team at this point. I know a lot of NFL experts and insiders are saying they're for real. I watched that Commanders-Steelers game yesterday. I've watched a couple of their games this year. The difference between these Commanders and the team under the Snyder regime is that they have a football team that wants to play. So what do you think, Rube, about this particular game? And it's is it in Washington?
No, it's in Philly.
It's in Philly. That's right. It's in Philly.
Yeah, I honestly haven't watched Washington play a lot this year. Obviously, I saw the Hail Mary. I listened. I caught the very end of the game yesterday where Washington jumped off sides, and it essentially ended the game. And so my sample of watching them is low. So I'll talk more from the perspective of why I think the Eagles will win versus why I think the Commanders will lose. I think our defense is really coming together nicely. We're getting to the quarterback. We're tackling. We're shorthanded in our tackling. I like all three aspects of the game. We're at home. And the Eagles didn't have to exert a ton of energy to beat a real bad Dallas team. So I think it's time where the Eagles flex their muscle. The Eagles are better on paper in all three aspects of the game and should win this game. Plus, it's at home, so I think we win. I don't know what's the point spread?
I don't even know if it's out yet.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so we'll win by more than a field goal. I'd say 5 points.
Well, this is a tough one because Washington is a team that gives the Eagles fits even when they're not good. Yep. Even when the Washington's not good, it often comes down to a pass in the end zone.
Yeah, true. Or a field goal.
Right, or something like that. So that's why I'm a little bit nervous about the game. I have watched a number of the Washington games. And there are some games where Washington looks honestly unstoppable. I think they still probably have the number one offense in the league.
Yeah, I think it was number 3. But yeah.
And Jaden Daniels looks really, really good. Doesn't even look like a rookie quarterback. I would say last week against the Steelers was the first week that I would say he was just average, and that was like a first. That's a first, like in his 9th game.
Right.
So, look, there's weapons there. Terry McLaurin is a great receiver. I feel like he's the top 10 guy, although some people say maybe not, but I feel like he is. Now, Quinyon Mitchell will have the major assignment of handling him, and he's handled everybody so far. But, eventually you're going to get beat. And the Steelers have a pretty good young corner in
JPJ.
Yeah, JPJ or Porter Jr. And McLaurin just ate his lunch. He destroyed him on Sunday. And so, so that's a big concern. The other concern I have, the defensive line of Washington is very good. So that's why I think it's critical to have Mailata back, because Mailata is the guy who would line up against Fowler. Mm-hmm. Fowler had 2 sacks against the Steelers, and he's been sacking for years.
Mm-hmm.
He's a heck of a player. I'll tell you what, too. The guy in the middle, Payne, is a hell of a player.
Yeah. Well, he's an all-pro.
Yeah, I mean, he's really good though. He's kind of a guy who, if you're not paying attention to the Commanders because they've been bad for a while, you might not know who he is, but he is really good.
He was one of their first-round draft picks a few years ago from Alabama. They got those two inside guys.
He's got Jonathan Allen.
Jonathan Allen.
Yeah, it's amazing too, because you think about it, they let two of their big defensive linemen walk.
Right.
And they're better.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They
Well,
let Sweat go, and they let Chase Young go.
Well, they traded Young last year, and they traded Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat. Yeah. But the thing about their line is that Payne is disruptive. Fowler's playing well. They've got a linebacker named Frankie Louvu who's got a lot of speed.
Yeah, he is.
But they're vulnerable in their secondary. Yeah, and that's the thing.
That's an area, like, for example, this guy St. Juiced, not so good.
No.
But I'll tell you what, I mean, that's the key to this game, as I would actually say is the key to any game against a good team, is you got to win the turnover battle. And that's not going to be a piece of cake, because Fowler and Payne are going to get after Jalen Hurts a little bit. So he's got to hold on to the ball.
Yep.
He can't fumble if he gets sacked. And he's got to keep the ball out of harm's way as well. So look, I mean, there's times where, look, we all know, watching the past couple weeks, Jalen can throw the ball over the middle, but sometimes you don't want to throw it over the middle. Like the one that was intercepted over the middle was, Diggs, their Pro Bowl corner, made a great play. There was another one earlier in the year where some other Pro Bowl corner intercepted one in the middle that was intended for Devontae Smith. So, the thing is that you still got to be careful where you're throwing the ball.
23 and 1 when we win the turnover battle over the past couple of years.
Well, and the difference between Commanders defense this year and Commanders defenses of, good Lord, the last decade is they have a lot of speed. And that is something that and they're also very aggressive. Dan Quinn likes to blitz. So that's where Hurts is going to have to look for this guy. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of checkdowns here, because if the Eagles I think the key to the Eagles' victory on offense is getting the ball into Saquon Barkley's hands on a screenplay.
Can we throw a freaking screen once this year?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Just once. Call Andy Reid and get the fucking playbook on how to run a screen. Sorry.
I think if you want to expose their defense, that is what they're vulnerable to. And I think if they're game planning for that, that's where you're going to catch them off guard. And now their defensive game plan is kind of thrown for a loop. And now you can take advantage of the fact that they don't have as much speed on the corner and their safeties. And now you've got A.J. Brown. I think this game is won in that short passing game and over the top. I don't think there's a lot of in the middle in this game that's going to be available to them. So to your point, Mark, yeah. I think that's how they win. And on defense, it's just keeping Jaden Daniels off balance, because honestly, the Redskins or the Commanders, he is great. He's great to watch. He looks like a pro quarterback. If he had one more real weapon, I mean, Zach Ertz is at the bottom of his career, right, and he's there for the veteran presence.
He's their second leading receiver, by the way. Did you know that?
He is, but it's that he's not gonna go over the top. He's not gonna run the seam over the top like some tight ends. So he's more of a possession type of guy. Scary Terry is good. He's actually great, but there's nobody. They don't have anybody else there who is a weapon. So you take Scary Terry out of this and you stay in Jaden Daniels' face. And I see the Eagles winning this game. I actually think this is going to be a wake-up call for both teams. For the Commanders, because now everybody said they're playing a real football team in the Steelers. And yeah, they hung tough with them and they could have won that game. But the Steelers are in a surprise position. The Eagles now, I feel, are starting to put a season together that instead of going, 10-0 or 11-1 and then collapsing, they're kind of starting to roll into the season in better form and playing better football. And this is going to be a wake-up call for A, the Eagles when they win the game, and B, the Commanders when they lose. So I'm gonna call it right now. It's going to be 31-21 Eagles. That's my prediction. I don't think it comes down, even though in the past it always seems to come down to one play. I think the Eagles are going to win this game.
We'll learn a lot about, like you said, both teams, but especially the Eagles this week. I mean, let's be really clear. They've beaten really not great teams over the past 5 weeks. They've won. That's good. That's good for ego. It's good for momentum. It's good for feeling good. But I think we'll learn a lot about the Eagles this coming Thursday, one way or the other. So I'm excited to see it. I will not be Negadelphia.
Good.
And I'm excited to see them come out and play a full game.
You got a game score for us, Rube? Then we'll let Schwaber do it, and we'll move on to page 3.
They both like to score points and are capable of points. So I'll say 28-24 Birds.
I'll go 27-20 Eagles.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And
we shall see.
And following up on the scoring points, Washington leads the league with 290 points to Philly's 233. But Philly's defense has been pretty stout, only 161 points against to the Skins 217. So
we've also played one less game.
That is true. Yeah. So add another 20 points and you're still,
right.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, there you go. I want to remind everybody, if you're watching us live, you're watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. This is the Sports Porch Philadelphia, and we're going to drop the podcast right after the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get
your
friggin' podcasts.
That's exactly right. And you can catch us live or anytime on YouTube at Philadelphia Sports Porch. Page 3. I can't wait to hear this. Sixers slop. Now, didn't they just win last night?
They did win.
So they're 2-7, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Do you realize both of their wins had to come in overtime?
Well, I mean, their wins. Rube's prediction was that the big three, Maxey, Paul, George, and what's his name, Embiid, don't play 25 games together. So far, they've played 9 games and
0 together.
So it's looking pretty good for you, Rube. So I mean, I'm
good news.
I'm apologizing. I don't know why.
Good news. I do believe Embiid is set to play the next game.
But his suspension's over?
He'd just be Embiid and George.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's still going to be another game in that column. Yeah.
Right. But, yeah, the thing is here, when your whole offense is basically based around Joel Embiid, it's really hard to win without him. I mean, it just really is. And, so you had Maxey in the beginning was, trying to do more than he should, and so he was still a couple games where he scored 50 points or 40 or 38 or whatever. But, he was also not shooting at a good percentage because he was trying to do more than he typically does. Then you have Paul George comes back, he's on a minutes restriction, the last 2 games, he's looked okay at times, but, he's still not up to speed quite yet. I'll tell you what, though, he does have a sweet shot. I mean, I've seen him knock down a couple threes, and it's nice to kind of know when he's got a guy with a hand in his face at the 3-point line that it can certainly still go in. But and I'm just not sure. I'm not sure if we can call this bad coaching or not. But it just doesn't feel like there's any sense of a plan or any kind of rhythm without Embiid in the game. It just seems like a bunch of guys standing around and nobody really knows what's going on. But I guess I can sort of also understand that, you go into the season with this is your role, this is your role, this is your role. Now all of a sudden your role is completely different and maybe you're not equipped for that role. So I don't know. One thing,
Schwabi, sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to respond to. You don't know if whether it's the coaching or what have you. I think it's kind of to my point that I made before the season. You sign these three guys to max deals, and you've got a bunch of has-beens and throwaways for the most part on the rest of your team. And when those three don't play, it's trouble. So I think Nurse has been dealt a very precarious hand, and I think it's more about how the team is built than it is the way Nick Nurse is coaching it. And that's why I'm worried, right? The 25 games was a provocative, that they'll play together. But man, if they don't all play, I think we're seeing what you get. And that's problematic.
I agree. I think in a lot of cases, especially one in which, look, you're relying on, these are your three stars. We've talked about this for years.
Right.
If you want to contend in the NBA, you have to have at least two, and optimally, you want three stars. You need to have all three of them on the court. And in that case, you're going to win some games. They're playing with literally with nothing now. So I don't think it's surprising at all that they got off to a slow start, and he's being played the hand he was dealt, which is what's left after those guys aren't playing. So I think you have to reserve that for if all three, Maxey, George, and Embiid, are healthy. Then how do they play together? Because you haven't really been able, adding a guy like Paul George into that game, yeah, he's a great player, but you've already got a superstar in Embiid. You've already got an up-and-comer in Maxey. Well, how does he fit into the game in the regular season? We haven't even been able to see that yet.
Right. Although on a positive note, though, I do think that we've found out a couple things early. The French guy, Grand Schwalbini, he's looking strong. He is. He's looking strong. A lot of people are saying.
Hey, how do you say that French guy's name, Grand Schwalbini? Please tell me.
Is it Yabusele?
Yeah, I think it's Gershon Yabusele.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's 53.1 field goal percentage leading the team.
10 points a game.
There's folks who are saying maybe he should start. And he's got great energy. He can hit a three. He can rebound. He's a good player. And also, their number one pick, Jared McCain, I think last night he put up 27 and went 10 of 18 and 4 of 7 from three. Young guy out of Duke, who's really known for shooting the ball well. So, we might have something there as well, which could be maybe a piece that if everybody was healthy, he doesn't crack the lineup.
True.
And we don't realize that he's maybe as good as he might be.
So the Sixers tomorrow night they are playing the Knicks, 7:30 p.m. on TNT.
Oh yeah, and by the way, how dumb and stupid is this in-season NBA tournament? Because that's the first game of the NBA in-season tournament. How stupid is that? I think the Lakers won it last year and they hung a banner. They hung a banner for winning the in-season tournament.
Is this like the Premier League in soccer where you play all this is I don't like it. I think they played too many games as it is, and then the postseason's too long. I think less is more with the NBA.
Well, so they have the Knicks, the Cavaliers, the next 5, Magic, Heat, and the Grizzlies.
Cavs are off to a great start.
Yeah, I think the Cavs were 10-0.
Yeah. So, it's really important. I think the big question here is, are they digging themselves a hole that even when Embiid, George, and Maxey can play together is going to be really hard to dig out of? And that's the real concern.
Well, I don't think the hole's too big to dig out of as far as making the playoffs. But unfortunately, they have dug themselves too big of a hole if they were thinking about getting one of the top 2 seeds.
Yeah.
And home court can mean a lot in the playoffs. Yeah. So, that we're just going to have to sort of deal with it. The way I sort of look at it is they're 2-7. If they can get to 16-16, then I think that we're okay at that point, like after 32 games.
Yeah, well, that would mean they'd have over the next few games, they'd have to go 14-9, which is not impossible.
Not impossible.
Not
with
impossible.
Embiid and George back, and maybe Maxi's back for the last half of it.
Yeah. Okay, page 4. Let's talk Flyers. Page 4 on the Philadelphia Sports Porch, all over the world on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X, and the podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
Page 4, the Flyers. You get a question here, Schwaber. Why do they only play well against good teams? Can you answer that?
Now, the last 2 games, can you pull them up?
The last 2 games?
Last 2 games. I think
Tampa. So we went Carolina, Florida, or Carolina, Tampa, Florida, which
Tampa, Florida,
which is like the axis of hell because they're all great teams.
Right. So Tampa we beat in a shootout. And
Florida we lost.
Florida, the Stanley Cup champs, we lose in a shootout, but we get the loser point.
Yeah, it was Tampa, you win.
Yep.
2-1. Florida, you lost
in a shootout.
Yeah, and somehow we also won and tied one both of those games without Matvei Michkov in.
Right.
and I don't know. So Ruby, what's your thought on this whole give him tough love? Like Torts basically says, I got to teach him how to play the right way. And when he's not playing the right way, I'm going to take him out of a shift, or I'm going to have him sit a game and watch from overhead and learn. Like he said, I took him out I didn't play him against Tampa because I wanted him to watch Kucherov play. I don't know, man. Like
put the guy on the damn ice.
I just
does Mike Krzyzewski sit his freshman, whatever he is, or not allow him play the whole game, or does he put him on the court and let him learn with other veterans? Put the guy on the damn ice and let's stop screwing around.
I tend to agree with you, but then at the same time, but what if Michkov comes out, because he is going to play tonight? What if Michkov comes out and scores a hat trick tonight? Then it did work. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Well, it's hard to say whether it worked or didn't work. But we said the beginning of the season, right? We said let the kids play, let them grow, let them learn from on the ice. They're going to take some losses. They're not winning the Stanley Cup this year. And a guy like Torts, I still think he's the right coach for this team. But he is super competitive, and he thinks they're, I think deep in his mind, he wants to make a run. And it's just not realistic with this team.
Well, I mean, I think what he's doing is, look, like all these offensive players, like to me, he's I don't know. He's kind of like a mix between an Ovechkin and a Crosby type. He's got the Crosby passing skills, but he's more of a scorer than Crosby, so more of an Ovechkin as well. So he's kind of like in the middle of those guys. I mean, granted, we pray he's as good as those guys.
I was going to say, tap the brakes there, buddy. Tap the brakes. You just named 2 Hall of Famers.
Right. But that's the thing. He's kind of like, that's the kind of player he is. And so let's be fair, though. A lot of the times those players are cherry pickers. They hang around at, the red line or the blue line, and they're waiting for the pass to go in on a breakaway. They're not sound defensively. They're not, back checking. They're not doing any of that stuff. And I do think that Torts wants him to be, a solid 2-way player. And so I imagine, what happens is, Michkov, lets some guy go right by him, as he tries to make an aggressive offensive play. And, there's a goal let up at the other end. And I think that Torts says, look, if I just basically yell at him on the bench, it's not going to accomplish anything. But what will accomplish something is not playing the next game. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what's right or wrong. I think it's just, there's different coaching styles. But at the same time, here's kind of like let's sort of make like a Sixers comparison. Okay. So the opposite way, is like how the Sixers have, nurtured Embiid through all these years, and just sort of let him get away with anything, and never really hold him accountable for anything. And has Embiid really grown into, yeah, sure, he's won an MVP, but has he really become, that fierce competitor champion type player? I think he can be that, but it hasn't happened yet. And like, so do we want to coddle Michkov, or do we want to, give him tough love? It's a tough question. How about somebody who doesn't really know what's going on? Just your general your general impression on just like.
Are you talking about in hockey and the Flyers, or just in life in general?
No.
I mean, I could talk,
no. I'm just talking about, with your experience, rooting for sports teams.
You're right.
Do you like a coach who gives more of a tough love approach, or do you like more of the coach who just says, go out there and play? That's how you're going to learn.
Well, I think that I can appreciate both sides of it. And I think since he's 19, right?
Yep.
So I think I understand what's going on. What he's saying is that there have been a couple of his performances where maybe he didn't play his position up to the level that Torts wanted him to play, and he made a couple mistakes. And he's saying, look, you're not a superstar yet. Mm-hmm. You need to sit on the bench. You need to watch how these guys play. Mm-hmm. All right. And now when you get out on the ice, maybe you've learned something. So I would say right now, I to Rob's point, put him on the damn ice and let him learn. There has to be a balance. So you can't continue to do that with this kid. You've got to let him make the mistakes on the ice as well, because he's not going to learn from his mistakes by sitting on the bench. So, but at his age, at 19, and I don't think that, we're on the outside here saying they're not going to win a cup this year. I think it's obvious. But when you're on the inside, when you're the head coach of an NHL team, when you're the GM, when you're the players, you're not thinking that. You're thinking, we want to win the Stanley Cup, whether it's realistic or not. You're playing to make the playoffs. You want to hit the second season and reset and get a chance. So I think maybe for now, not necessarily the worst idea, but I don't know that I would do it again. I think you're sending a message to him like, hey, you're not, and I don't know what his attitude is. It might be a great attitude, but hey, you're not the leader of this team yet. You're not playing like a leader. You need to watch for a couple games and watch how these guys play. And of course, it's going to be much more technical than just watch these guys play.
Yeah. And I mean, look, I did listen to some of the things that Torts said, and, I kind of wonder, like, because, Torts basically said, like, he's like, look, he's not just like sitting up there, like he's in the doghouse. Right. He knows that after the game, I'm going to quiz him on what happened. Right. So I think that that's a positive. But the part of it that we don't know, though, is how is Michkov himself taking it?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Does he understand? There's got to be a language barrier there.
Well, he's got an interpreter.
Yeah, I think he understands, but it's more about is it doing something to him emotionally as a player? And I would say probably not. I don't think so.
I think he's been through enough. I mean, coming from Russia, they basically like sent him off to like a labor camp to work for a year. So
did they really?
What?
I don't know if is that him or is that Vadotov or
I thought that was.
I think it was Michkov. Michkov went to Sochi.
I thought you were talking about Rocky.
No. But,
all right.
You get the idea. Mother Russia is difficult to deal with.
What would be interesting to see, and I don't know how many guys had this type of expectation when they were 18 or 19 years old to be. I mean, you're already putting him with the greats, the Grand Schwabini, and he's got to earn those comparisons, and he certainly has not as of yet. But, that's our hope. That's our dream as Flyers fans, and that's probably his dream. And is he capable? Yeah, I'm sure he is. But, like, what if Ovechkin was 19? Or when he was 19, or Lindros, or whomever these Bedard or McKinnon, Crosby.
Yeah.
Would the same thing have worked with them? And did their coaches do the same thing with
No.
them?
No.
I'd be curious.
No, I don't think I don't think Crosby. I think when Crosby went in, he was in. I don't think he was ever sat for that reason.
Yeah, he was. I think he was very coddled. Like he basically lived with Mario Lemieux.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? He actually lived in his home.
Well, the only thing we can say is we'll see if it works when he gets back in the game tonight.
We'll see.
We'll see if they leave him in. So more to come on that. Let's move on to what we're watching. If you're watching the Sports Porch Philadelphia live on Facebook every Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and of course the podcast on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you get your friggin' podcasts. Thanks for being here. What we're watching, well, there's a lot of streaming services out there. There's a lot of places you can consume content. I mean, we're actually creating content while consuming content on the other screen in the studio. I mean, it's kind of gotten out of hand.
If it's content, we got it.
Yeah, that's right. So what do? We peruse the content that's out there. We make some decisions for you, hopefully, and we make some recommendations to save you time.
We do.
Yeah, and we call it what we're watching. So we're going to start with Rube.
Mm-hmm.
Rube, you are currently watching something.
The Diplomat.
We were talking about it before the show on Netflix. Go for it.
Love it, right? So season 2 of The Diplomat, Carrie Russell.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't remember. I remember her being this curly-haired cute girl on like a CW show.
Felicity.
Felicity. There you go. You can leave it to the Grand Schwabini to be able to get us in touch with our inner teenage TV watching.
As if that's difficult.
And it's really good. And she actually is the executive producer. But for those of you who are watching that don't know much about it, so she is a diplomat and the ambassador from the United States to England and Great Britain. And she is married to a career diplomat played by Rufus Sewell, who plays a great role. I think he's like whoever guy wants to be, and advises her. And they kind of got a strained marriage, but at the end of the day, she finds herself in some precarious positions. And then this season, there is an attack on one of the British. Yep.
Don't tell us too much. Amy May says we are going to watch.
Okay. So anyway, wonderful show, great acting.
It's always got
and how can I say this? If you like kind of like the West Wing or those types of shows that are really smart, and the banter is really cool, this is that type of show.
Well, this is what I want to know. So I watched the first season. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I did like it. I think my wife liked it a little more than me. I think, Chris, you loved it, didn't you? Didn't you say you did?
I liked it. I think it took a little while. I'm a big character development guy. So like in the first couple episodes, I didn't feel there wasn't a believability factor, but I think they started to warm up. So I've actually started watching season 1 again because it's been a while. So
So my question, Rob, is it, how do you compare it to season 1?
Well, here's part of the problem. So I like it better than season 1 because I think some of the things she did were just a little too hyperbolized. And in this season, it seemed to be like, I can see an ambassador getting into this type of situation, and it's more kind of pulling the puppet strings and how do you navigate your way through very difficult situations. So I really enjoyed it. I would watch it again. But here's the problem. I don't even remember the first season because it's been forever ago. So I need to go rewatch it. I was watching it with Lemmer, and I'm like, I don't even remember who this person was. Oh yeah, that's the one that came in. So I'd like to see the seasons come a little faster. That's
for sure.
All right, Rube. The Diplomat is recommending The Diplomat on Netflix, 2 seasons. Mark is watching something on Hulu.
24 Legacy.
Now I hadn't heard of. Is this like a
This is when 24 was over,
right?
I guess a year or two later. Obviously, fans were wanting more 24, but I guess Kiefer Sutherland maybe just didn't want to do it, but Kiefer Sutherland is the producer of this.
Mm-hmm.
So 24 Legacy, it's just like one more year of 24. It's only 12 episodes, so it's like 2 hours at a time, even though it's only an hour. If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, man, it was really good. I mean, I have to say, it's, the funny thing is that when you stream and you watch it all together, you don't have as much time to say I got tired of it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is, I imagine, why eventually a popular show like 24 comes to an end, because people are just like, how many things can you get out of? It's the same thing. I want something new. But, look, it was pretty much an all new cast for 24 with just one holdover. And I thought it was great. I mean, look, it's, if you like, Navy SEAL, Army Ranger, spy type stuff, and you want to be completely entertained for 12 episodes, beginning to end, I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Now, what was his signature phrase? Remember you said,
well, that's the thing.
Damn it.
Yeah, let's see. Kiefer Sutherland's signature phrase was, he thinks he saved the world, then he realizes that he hasn't. And actually things are worse. And then he goes, damn it. But the new guy didn't really have a signature phrase.
Oh, okay.
Phrase. So no signature phrase.
No, okay. All right. Well, good enough.
Yep.
Legacy.
I'm gonna watch it. Thank you, Schwabi. I kind of like the Legacy. I liked Bosch Legacy. I don't know if you ever watched Bosch.
Yeah. You watched that.
Winner.
Yep.
Okay.
24 Legacy on Hulu. I am have just finished season 2 of Fear the Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
And it is now on Netflix. Now, a little backstory here. I started watching The Walking Dead way back when it was a real show, and I stopped watching the original in season 8.5 because I was actually getting bored with it. And then I had been watching Fear the Walking Dead alongside of it, and I kind of stopped watching them both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And fast forward a couple years and all of the offshoots and all that, and I regretted not finishing the whole thing. So I committed myself to watching the entire series, all the offshoots, everything, all the way up until present day, catching up to Daryl Dixon. So I completed watching The Walking Dead season 11 a couple weeks back. I started watching Fear the Walking Dead. Now, our guidelines are you have to have finished the season.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, today I finished season 2 of Fear the Walking Dead on Netflix. And I got to tell you, now that I've been watching them, it's been like a Walking Dead marathon for me the last few months. Fear the Walking Dead to me is better than The Walking Dead.
It's absolutely not. But
I think it is.
But it is very good.
Yeah,
it is very good.
I think season 1 and season 2 of Fear the Walking Dead, because they take place at the same time basically as season 1 and season 2 of The Walking Dead. I think season 1 and both season 1s of Fear and The Walking Dead are equal. They're on par. But season 2 to me of The Walking Dead is better than season 2, or Fear the Walking Dead is better than season 2 of that one.
The reason why it can never be is because there's no Rick Grimes and there's no Negan.
Yeah, well, and
those are the two best. Now, I will say, I'd almost put Morgan as my third guy.
Yeah. Well, I like Nick in the first 2 seasons, and I know, because I did watch enough of it to know what Nick's trajectory is after.
And I like the cowboy.
Yeah.
The guy with the cowboy.
Yeah. I think that's the beginning of season 3.
Oh, is he? Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But he gets off too. But I love Nick in the first few seasons of that.
Yeah.
So
did you ever watch any of the Deads, Rube?
I never did, but I worked with a guy whose son was Dr. Sadiq. If you ever saw him,
Really?
Yeah, he played many seasons.
Yeah.
Many seasons.
Mhm.
Yeah, he
The
ended
doctor, right? The
up. Yeah,
doctor.
he was the guy that Carl found.
Right.
Yeah. So I would highly recommend, Rube, that you pick up The Walking Dead. It's a fantastic show. Now everybody says that doesn't want. I don't like zombie shows or whatever. Blah blah blah.
It's really not about the zombies. I mean that's
exactly right.
Like
what's the premise of The Walking Dead?
I'll give you the premise. It's really simple. The world goes to absolute shit. Your worst nightmare happens and everything falls apart. And it's really, what would everyday ordinary people do in the event that absolutely everything that is true is gone, like electricity, power, order, food, and now you're scrounging to try to live, and it's every man and every woman for himself. That's the premise. So there are people in these shows that they will do the little backstory on, and they might have been a teacher in regular life, and now that the world has gone to shit, they're murdering thugs, because they've had to become that. Now, what created this apocalypse is some sort of condition that somehow everybody has now, that when you die, and then your brain comes back to function, but you're basically a zombie that's hungry and wants to eat anything that's living.
Oh boy.
So what happens is the show transitions from, and obviously when there's an apocalypse and it's everybody becomes zombies when they die, well, the first year is going to be like, what the fuck is all of this?
Right.
But as the years progress, the zombie part of it just kind of becomes an underlying danger, almost kind of like going into the woods and having to put on off because you don't want to get a tick bite. It's like, we got to deal with the dead. But
got to deal with the zombies.
You got to be careful now. Now that we've learned what their weakness is and how to live with them, and that it's what's going to happen, we still have to make sacrifices and all of that. Would you agree with me, Mark?
Yeah, that's a pretty good description.
Finally, he agrees with me on something.
And I would say that, it's a show that for whatever reason, my wife would probably never, ever want to watch. And what happened was, this was I started watching this when I was getting Netflix in the mail,
wow.
in what, 2010 or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would just keep putting them in the DVD, she'd kind of be in the background. And then she got really into it in season 2 when they were on the farm.
Right.
She liked all the relationships with everybody on the farm. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so it's really a lot about relationships too.
Yeah.
It's a lot of good character development and all that kind of stuff.
It's an incredibly well done psychological treatise on what would happen if the world went to shit. And all
like what's about to happen? Wait, this is an apology.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay,
exactly. Yeah, what's currently happening as we speak. Right. Yeah. So Fear the Walking Dead on Netflix. I would advise anybody who hasn't watched any of it, and most people have watched at least a part of this show, but I would tell you that it's literally, it is just as good. So that's about all we got, guys. You guys, any parting shots here before I, fire up the music and tell everybody where they can listen to us and see us and hear us and love us? All right.
I'd like to see a big W this coming Thursday night. I'm excited to see it.
All right. Well, listen, you've been watching, if you're watching live, the Sports Porch Philadelphia all over the world on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and of course, I'm going to drop this podcast right after the show on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or guys, anywhere you get
your friggin' podcast.
Your gosh darn podcast. and remember, follow us on YouTube, the Sports Porch Philadelphia, youtube.com/@Philadelphia Sports Porch. For Rube down in Texas, Amy May says, good show. For the Grand Schwabini to my right in the studio, I am your technical director. Next week, it's probably just going to be me and Rube. I am out. Jablons.